All right, I think we're live. Hey, everyone, it's Robin. Welcome to Great Minds Drink Alike podcast, where we welcome really brilliant entrepreneurs, marketers, people like Joe, where we hang out, we hear their stories, their strategies for success over a drink. As usual, if you're just kind of joining us, we have this streaming all over the interwebs. I know we've got it on Facebook, we got it on YouTube, we got it on Great Minds Drink Alike podcast or MSP Success podcast. So remember, I got the chat here. I'm looking at the chat. Brian Butterfield's already telling me that he is the sword guy here. So he just gave me a samurai sword, Joe, this guy, and it's custom. So it's a pretty cool thing, right? So he's awesome. On, yeah, it's pretty cool. So make sure you do that. Make sure you also subscribe, find those buttons to subscribe and join us. That way you can make sure you don't miss an episode. But what I want you guys to do, I'm looking at the chat over here. Make sure you post where you're listening in from, what you're drinking. Joe, do you know that you're supposed to be drinking during this podcast?
Yeah, I got Mountain Valley spring water.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get crazy here today.
How are we even friends? I mean, you drinking like spring water. I mean, like I want something toxic. So check this out. So I'm drinking this wine and I specifically picked it because you were going to be on. It's called Immortal. All right. It's a pretty good cab. And the reason I was telling Karen when we're getting ready to get on here, I was telling Karen, I picked this because do you remember when you were in Franklin? I don't even know what you came in for. And we were having dinner at Cork and Cow and you had like this bracelet or something, or was a neck? I think it was a bracelet where it looked like a diabetes kind of break. There you go.
Yeah.
What is that? Are you diabetic? Like what's wrong with you? Peanut allergy or something? And
you really want to talk about this? This is the first thing you want to talk about? Yeah. So it's a medical bracelet on what to do with my body when I die, and it's how to prepare it to be chronically suspended in basically a big container of liquid nitrogen, so that when the technology exists that they can bring back life, then it's a possibility. It makes for a good dinner conversation. I mean, we can go wherever you want with anything, and I'll answer any questions to the best of my abilities about this. But yeah, it's a Chronics bracelet by Alcor. If anyone wants to get signed up for that, I don't get an affiliate commission because I'd be, but it's alcor.org. So do you know the top cryonics place in the world, Robin, is in Scottsdale, Arizona?
Yeah, I think you told me. I got their brochure here. Let me share it with you. This was on the cover of the brochure.
So you actually were all prepared for this, right? It's not like Joe Rogan.
Grab that photo, like
you pictures. That's
I was like, grab that photo right before we got on. I was like, because I was telling Karen, and like, I mean, I was like, had all this wine. I'm like, okay, which one? And I just like, I remembered that time we were sitting there, and I was like, that to me is just it's the funniest shit, because like they're not going to freeze your whole body, right? They're just freezing your brain and your spinal column or something.
No, I'm signed up for a full body suspension, everything. So you can have just the brain and spinal cord, because the whole objective is to preserve consciousness. And but here's the thing, because there's lots of weird, like the weirdest marketing consultation I ever had in my life was in 1999 in my buddy Mark Tarbell's restaurant. Mark, Mark, he won Iron Chef, and he's one of the top chefs in the world, and a great restaurant in Phoenix. And I sat, my buddy Dave Kekich, who unfortunately passed away last year, he's the first one that turned me on to cryonics, and he's actually there suspended right now with both of his mother and father. And Dave devoted his whole life to, life extension, because he was paralyzed from the chest down. And he said, can you meet with the Alcor board? And there was a bunch of different members at the time, but I met at this restaurant with all these people talking about how do we market, cryonics. And that really, I'm like, what the hell do I tell them? And I said, with all the religious and spiritual aspects and beliefs and science and all of the things, how people are going to interpret it, celebrity endorsement. You need to find someone that the public trust and resonate with that would be willing to speak openly about this. But even then, I still had not signed up for it. And what pulled the trigger for me was I went to a cryonics. That's kind of funny. Pulled the trigger for me, right? Wow. Can't believe I said that. But basically, if you think about transplants, if someone is able to live because of a lung transplant or a kidney transplant or a heart transplant, if that person that died, did they really die? If their tissue still stays alive, what is death? And currently death, the heart stops beating, the breathing stops. There are still many cells that are alive. And so there have been animals that have been frozen in lakes and stuff that were brought back to life, 48 hours, 72 hours later. And so it's not that this will or will not work. It's just a matter of time, and it's a matter of how much damage is actually done to the human body. And I'm sure that's what we were going to talk about, how great friends drink alike. But a guaranteed way to preserve yourself is if you just drink heavily, your life will probably not be as long, and maybe not as, I don't know. But
a hell of a lot more fun. I'll tell you that.
What are you drinking? Are you drinking wine? That particular wine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. Awesome.
So there you go.
Well, there you go.
So we're having a little drink here, a drinky drink. So anyway, no, but okay. So let me I have your your bio here. So I'm going to read a little bit of this just so people, because I can't remember it all, but I'll read some of this and then I'll just kind of fill in the gaps because you're so famous. Like I was telling I just was on another call with my client coaches and they're like, "Oh, who are you having on today?" And I said, "Oh, Joe Polish." And they're like, "Who?" And
yeah.
Anyway, okay. So
I don't want to be famous. I could care less about fame. Bad things happen with fame.
No. I mean, and like, like Brandon's one of them. She's like, "I've heard the name before because you talk about him." I'm like, okay, so you're famous in that way. So anyway, let me read this so people know who you are. So Joe Polish is the founder of Genius Network, one of the highest level groups in the world for entrepreneurs. He curates the annual Genius Network event, Genius Network 25,000 and 100,000 K, all three groups being home to some of the most successful entrepreneurs alive, and is considered one of the most influential connectors in the world. I would add, I think you're one of the best connectors in the world. And I'm not just saying that, I mean that sincerely. So Joe has also helped build thousands of businesses and generated hundreds of millions of dollars for his clients. He's been featured on Inc., Fortune, Forbes, Success, U.S. News World Report, among others, and now our little podcast here, which is the best one of them all, right? And has spoken at Stanford University. Joe is also host of 3 top-ranked marketing and business podcasts on iTunes, including iLoveMarketing, 10X, and Genius Network. Are you still doing iLoveMarketing? I thought I saw something about that.
Yeah. Me and Dean Jackson do it. I went on a 1-year sabbatical last year, so we kind of didn't do it during that year. But Dean did a few. But yeah, we still do it. Been going for 12 years now.
Okay. He's also changed the lives of many others through his charitable causes, including the Make-A-Wish Foundation, Artists For Addicts, Genius Recovery, JoeVolunteer.com, as well as being the single largest contributor to the Sir Richard Branson charity Virgin Unite. Is that still true too? I mean, when's the last time you talked to
me? I think to this day I'm still the largest fundraiser. But I believe it is.
You're pretty big in China too, because I'm reading here that your documentary connected the Joe Polish story premiered in the historic TCL Chinese Theater. So he's huge in China, huge, like a Trump.
Yeah, that was the Chinese theater in Los Angeles, but you never know. I mean, China.
David Hasselhoff's really big in Germany too. He's got.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know him? You should connect us. We can talk about Baywatch and stuff.
Well, I tried to get him on this show because I thought that would be the funniest thing, to be drinking with David Hasselhoff. I mean, just I don't even know where it would go and what would come of it, but I just think it's some of the funniest shit. Like it just, I mean, could you imagine the questions I would ask?
That would be hysterical.
Maybe.
I think, I don't know do you know if even I just remember that unfortunate video of him that his daughter took. And, look, Robin, I have an addiction foundation, so I have a little bit, I almost have to pause before I can make jokes about people drinking and being drunk, but
Well, no, I mean, it's not even not about the addiction. He's just like a really kind of, I don't know, nothing to do with the addiction. That's all. He's just have you seen any of his music videos?
Not in a long time.
Okay. You got to go Google that. I mean, it is like the cheesiest 80s of cheese. Like it is so, I mean, and it's like current, and in Germany, apparently it's like this, he's like this big deal. Anyway, so that's what's funny to me. I mean, he seems like one of those people who's like,
I've hung out with Pamela Anderson before. Maybe we can get all three of them. So
that would be awesome. All right. Very cool. All right. So wait a minute, I'm not even done. Wait a minute. Joe's mission with entrepreneurs and Genius Network is to build a better entrepreneur. His mission with Genius Recovery is to change the global conversation of how people view and treat addicts with compassion instead of judgment, and to find the best forms of treatment that has efficiency, and to share those with the world. So
efficacy, Robin, efficacy.
Okay, I thought that's what it meant, but it was, there must be a typo. Anyway, all right. So that's why I paused on that. I'm like, I don't know that that's right. Okay, so no, I think like in hanging out with you, I think you did change even my attitude about addiction and what it means and so forth. And I had a good friend. My brothers were addicted. They were addicted to drugs. My oldest brother, I haven't seen him since I was, God, I'm trying to remember. I think I was 9 or 10 years old. It's like fuzzy. It was kind of a weird thing. The last time I saw him, he took my sister and I to this little hot dog stand, and he bought us like a hot dog and a soda. And it was almost like, I didn't realize at the time, it was almost like he was saying goodbye, and because it was so weird. He'd never done that before. And I knew he was in trouble with the police. I knew he was taking drugs. The police were on a first name basis with my parents. And I've never seen him since. And so, I've lost people who have had drug addictions, and it's like, you can't just say, hey, stop it. And, so anyway, I think that you have done a world of good to help people understand that addicts and people with addiction problems are not like these like deplorables who, they are choosing this and so forth. So anyway, for what it's worth, I think you do a lot of good there. So
when's the last time you saw, how long ago was that?
Well, I'm 50. So, I can't remember I think I was like 8 or 9. So
wow. So that many, okay. So you're talking over 4 decades ago.
Yeah. I mean, so it's, 42 years ago, I think I was 8 or 9, so but I mean, and I think he's still alive. We don't know, but so there's all kinds of challenges and out there in the world. So anyway, so you're like an interesting guy too. And I know people in my audience might not know you, but you started out as your story, that you were a dead broke carpet cleaner. Even if you go back, I think you dealt with your own addiction problems, and you've turned your life around from being, like an addict that was just was out of control, if I may say so. I don't mean like, that in a hurtful way, but you were seriously affected by drug addiction, turned that all around, started a successful carpet cleaning business. You got hooked up with Gary Halbert, Dan Kennedy somehow. Then you started doing marketing, built the largest marketing firm for cleaning companies, I guess the cleaning industry, which kind of spans more than just carpet cleaners. Then went on to start Genius Network. So, I mean, like, it's kind of interesting. And now, and like last year, was it last year you went on the sabbatical, or was it?
Yeah, it was last year. It was 2021. I went on a 1-year sabbatical from January to January 1st to December 31st. So 1 year.
Very cool. So tell us, fill a little bit in the background of like, how did you overcome being an addict and like starting a business? I mean, talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, and let me frame it from the standpoint that I'll try to talk about it with the idea that everyone that's watching us, listening, whatever, has a problem that they're trying to solve, and they're dealing with stuff, so that anything I talk about is not me talking about me, but it's really, hopefully, there will be some instructional things that people can resonate with in their own lives, and how I pursued clawing my way out of messes and clawing my way into opportunities, and spending most of my life clawing and getting to a point where I didn't want to claw that much anymore. I wanted to be more aligned with things, because you spend many years as a workaholic, which is the respectable addiction, right? Because many of my very financially successful friends are just really driven workaholics. You know, this book, Driven, by Dr. Doug Brackman, who's a friend of mine, kind of explains the driven entrepreneurial brain, you know, the hunter versus the farmer. And only a small percentage of the population is a hunter. I would be in that category. You would be in that category, where a lot of the drive is, you know, coming from this gene inside of us and this desire. Some of that is also created by adversity in childhood, usually. You know, certainly my addiction and my need of being resourceful and figuring things out was definitely formed from childhood experiences, which weren't very pleasant. And, you know, I mean, I had a lot of pretty bad stuff happen to me as a kid. My mother died when I was 4. I was raised Catholic. My mother was a former nun before she left the convent, and then met my father, and they ended up getting married and having me and a brother. And then I was raped and molested as a kid, became a drug addict because of the trauma that I didn't have a means of dealing with as a child. And I got sober from drugs, but then I had sexual addiction, which is an intimacy addiction. And that was because I never had any exposure to healthy sexuality. And it was a pursuit of just trying to find a bond, but in maladaptive ways. And when you even say that publicly, which I never did for years, you know, immediately conjures up, oh, sex addict, you want to have sex with everything. Not necessarily. Sexual addiction could also be sexual anorexia, where you're not able to be sexual and feel comfortable. And entrepreneurs are, you know, pursuing, if they're using it in an ethical way, betterment. They're trying to make things better. So you are bringing people's thinking, inventions, innovations, solutions, and improving something, and you're making it up and you're making it real, which is a Dan Sullivan line. You know, we make it up, we make it real. I started out as a Deborah carpet cleaner. No idea that I would learn marketing. Didn't even know what marketing was. But I learned marketing, never thinking I would teach it to anyone, because I grew up very shy and introverted, so much so that, you know, asking someone out on a date or go to prom or whatever in high school, you know, I never did it because I was definitely afraid. And I grew up in a lot of fear, and I was a very shy, skinny, introverted kid. And what I learned, though, through the process of studying marketing, a lot of books, I mean, my mentors, if I had any, were books. I would read books, and marketing, as you know, is applied psychology. It's really the study of human behavior, but studying it in a way to where you can influence it, communicate, persuade, compel, enroll. And in a lot of ways, I was learning it and originally just to try to figure out how to survive. And then I fell in love with the fact that you could change words in advertising, because there's no internet when either you or I first started studying marketing. It was very brand new. I mean, I had my first website in 1996. So both me and you, even though we have different industries, we have very similar ways that we went about learning. You know, both of us have studied a ton about copywriting and marketing and offers and conversion and sales and all of that. And, you know, curmudgeonist Dan Kennedy, you know, both of us have spent plenty of time with that goofball. And, you know, he's a very smart dude, and he wrote a lot of the copy for me the first 9 years of my business. And yeah, but, you know, the thing today is I realized that out of over 1,000 books, over $2 million that I've spent on my marketing education, one of the groups, if you even want to call it that I admire the most is 12-step groups, because 12-step groups have helped millions of people with something that most people don't like talking about, which is addiction. And they're predominantly free. You know, they are held together by the voluntary contributions of their members, and they don't utilize advertising and promotions. As a matter of fact, they shy away from it, with a little caveat that if it wasn't for articles in the Saturday Evening Post way back decades ago in late 30s and 40s and 50s and stuff, they did get PR that allowed many people to find out about them, but it was never something that they ever planned, wanted to do, or orchestrated. And to this day, the one group that I think has made such a giant impact has been done not through marketing or promotion, but through what they call attraction. But I'll tell you, no one's attracted to going to a 12-step meeting. There's nothing attractive about it. It's really about desperation. And the point is if you can solve a problem for somebody and you have a solution that actually works, you can get word of mouth that will spread. Other people will find out about it. And then if you add effective marketing behind it, that's how you really scale something. That's how you really blow it up. So I'm also a big, I read on a sugar packet years ago. I was at some cafe. I don't even know what the hell this was, but my brain remembers dirty jokes and quotes. And so it said, the caption was advertising, and it said on the back of the sugar packet, "He who has something to sell," which they can never say that today. That would not, the woke culture would not allow that. It would have to be he or she or they or whatever. It said, "He who has something to sell and whispers in a well is not as apt to make the shiny dollar as the guy that climbs the tree and hollers." And I remembered that. And I was like, no matter what you have, you aren't going to, you don't want to bank on getting discovered. There's a lot of people that travel throughout the world. Personally, I wish we didn't have to do any of this marketing stuff. I wish if you were just a good human being and you cared that, karmically people would seek you out, they would do business with you, pay you in a way to where you were able to run a business and make a good profit, and you didn't have to go through all of the myriad of things that one has to do in order to figure out how to make it work. However, we don't live in that world. There's a lot of people that have zero credibility, that aren't even competent, but if they have good marketing and good hustle, they can sell their stuff. And there's other people that could be amazingly credible, but they're broke, and because there is no relationship between being good and getting paid, but there's a huge relationship between being a good marketer and getting paid. And so that's where the marketing came in, because when I was a dead broke carpet cleaner, I did a good job. I cared about my clients. I worked my ass off. I wanted people to be happy, and if people weren't happy, I would give them their money back, even before I knew what a money back guarantee was, or let alone that you could even use that as a positioning tool, right? And so I was broke though, and I spent 2 years going deeply in debt, but damn it, I had this little entrepreneurial fantasy and I wanted to figure out how to make it work. So I did immense study. I would clean carpets doing hard manual labor, and then I'd go home and I would read Gary Halbert newsletters, and I would read all of the old classic marketing books like Claude Hopkins and Robert Collier and Vic Schwab and all of these books on offers. And then I found out about people like Dan Kennedy and started buying courses. And back then, you didn't give interviews away for free. People actually charged for this stuff. And so, listen to Nightingale Conant tapes and motivational stuff and, Tony Robbins tapes. And what's funny is, like, one of the very first most influential books that I, had read at the time was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And the book was great at describing stuff. Michael knew nothing about marketing. I mean, several years later, he hired me as a marketing consultant, and now he's in his mid 80s. And a few months ago, I did a Zoom meeting with him just to talk with him about stuff. He's still as arrogant as he's always been. But basically, the E-Myth was great, but it didn't teach anything about marketing. And so, but I was reading and I was studying, and I was like, if there's any area of your business that you could automate and systemize, it would be the one area designed to bring in business, which is the sales and marketing. And along the way, in the 90s, kind of mid to late 90s, me and you met each other. You probably remember where. I don't, but it was in probably some marketing conference.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'll tell you,
it was at I'm sure it was like at a Dan Kennedy event. Because I think you were Dan's poster child for a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? So he used to talk about you a lot, and you're even in his so this is like, for people like you and I, this is like cool, but everyone else is like, who cares? But you're actually, he uses this story, and I think it's based loosely or maybe exactly on you, where he talks about in his stump speech for magnetic marketing, which is where he went on the Peter Lowe tour, and he would, get up on stage in 75 minutes and he would sell his magnetic marketing. And he tells the story about target marketing, and he had a client and sent out a flyer and it didn't work, and so you got in the car and you drove around and looking at people, like roll down the window, take a good look. We went out and looked at them like around 5 o'clock when they're coming home from work, but they haven't put the rock in the hole yet, so you can have a look at them. And the neighborhoods you were driving through was like the guy in the wife beater shirt, the kids being babysat by the dog. Like I even remember that, you know what I mean? Like the story.
Yeah.
I'm telling it all, I mean, horribly, but and he was just making that point that, are these people are going to buy carpet cleaning? And the answer is like, no, because if they clean their carpets at all, it might be they go down to to Home Depot or Walmart or wherever and rent a cleaner and clean it once a year, maybe. I don't know. Is there any truth to that? Now that I'm thinking about it.
In the beginning, until he met me, he started incorporating many of the things that I was doing and had discovered into what he did, and vice versa. I mean, I learned a lot from Dan too, so I have to give Dan credit. And at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that I figured out and did and was doing that I became, I was like his poster child, because I really was I guess for lack of a better word, a rags to riches story. I mean,
a good marketer too. I mean, you're great. I mean, I mean that sincerely. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but so I learned about Kennedy. I was working at a marketing firm, right? And what was the first information product? I have it over here on my shelf somewhere. It'll come to me in a second. So I remember getting like my first info product, and that kind of led to another. And somehow I went to a Peter Lowe event. I discovered Kennedy. But I was still working for a marketing firm at the time, right? And I started reading his stuff, and it because I was a salesperson. So I'm reading his stuff and going, this makes absolute perfect sense. Like the agency I was working for is like, they're a bunch of goofballs. I remember I got on a call with Kennedy, you remember you had the dial-in days and you had to keep dialing in. The phone was busy. You just had to keep dialing, right?
No, seriously, people would find that hard to believe today.
But that
right? Literally was, yeah.
Anyway, so I get through, and I remember telling him like, well, I'm at this agency and they still have me just making cold calls. They won't send out direct mail. They won't do any kind of lead generation. What do I do? And he told me like, well, you got to quit. So anyway, so like after I left that place, I had gotten to know this world of direct response, and I found you. I still have your kit. Like I'm looking at it. It's over there on my shelf, your Piranha Marketing, right? And so
that's awesome.
I think it's on cassettes even, right? So
yeah. No, we did that on cassette, and
right.
I can't believe you actually can fit everything in that space. I had to buy an 11,000 square foot building to store all the
stuff today. Just stuff that I keep on hand. I've got a whole library that I have in my house. Yeah. So, and a lot of stuff today is digital. So anyway, but I remember, do you remember me calling you and looking for a job? Do you remember that?
Yeah, very vaguely. And I think the best, and you tell me if you can remember this, but I believe the conversation was, you don't really want to work for someone, you want to run your own thing. You're an entrepreneur. But part of it was, but I think that's where we ended up, starting a long and loving friendship, Robin.
Yeah, no, I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. I remember us talking. I remember specifically where it was, because you called me back, and I was in the gym and I had my cell phone, which the old flip phones, whatever. And I remember it ringing, and I picked it up, and it was you, and I was like, oh shit, it's Joe, and I was like, oh, I'm trying. So and anyway, I don't know, like I don't remember being like, you said, hey, I can't, you don't want to work for me, or I don't know. I don't remember exactly how it all kind of ended up, but that was the year that I was just getting started, but I had just left that agency and I got fired. And so I was like, shit, what am I going to do? Right. And I needed to find income. So I started doing private consulting. And then like after a year, I was like, I think maybe I could do this. Right. And then I got into the niche that I'm in now, which is for IT, which kind of like started middle of that year, and 6 months in, and I was like, okay, this is my niche, it's my vertical. So and that's as they would say, all she wrote. But no, but I think that let me ask you this, because we're talking about a lot of things, but I want to go back, and I'm curious, like, because you've been through a lot in your life, because like people hear me. I just spoke at the National Speakers Association. Nito Cobain asked me, because he was here in Nashville, and he asked me if he could come over and he could interview me on stage, and I did. And, he wanted to make sure I told my background of being like homeless when I was a kid, and the church I grew up with, the religious cult that I was in, and, all these things. And, I said to him, like, I don't really look at it like it was all that bad. You know what I mean? Like compared to other people. And yet when I look back at the time, it didn't feel good because there was a lot of uncertainty in my life. But it made me who I am. So my question to you is just sort of, when you're looking back and you go, holy shit, all the things, your mother dying when you were 4. I know your father really couldn't handle that. I mean, I know you've told me that, like, he did the best he could, but it was, was not great. And the sexual abuse, and then the drug abuse, and all the things that, you're trying to figure out. If you could change that, if you could like wave a magic wand and go back and change your life, would you have had it different? Or like, do you think that it really made you who you were?
I'd have to think about that question seriously. I mean, yeah, I would certainly change certain things that I think if I had the power and I could, but it's also hard for me to fathom that, because the stuff that I'm doing today, which I would like to think helps a lot of people, which it does, and is pretty significant. And I know for a fact we've saved many lives with the work that, not that I would say I do, but that I've been a catalyst for, that brings in other people, that have helped a lot of people. None of that would have been even possible. I wouldn't have an addiction foundation if I wasn't an addict. I wouldn't know about trauma and all of the stuff that I do had I not gone through all this stuff. So the things that I regretted for many years of my life, now I look back and realize there was finding meaning in the suffering, finding purpose in the pain, and that it was valuable to the degree I do something with it. Mm-hmm. And I also, I tell my story often because I get asked about it. And when you have an addiction foundation, people are like, well, what, how did you get into that? I was an addict, what I have to be careful to do though, and almost everyone does, is I'll say it this way, don't believe your own PR. If you start having a lot of success and a lot of great things happen to you, you're human. Everybody has their shit, and life basically is mundane and boring a lot of the time. When you watch a James Bond movie, you have to realize it's a bit of a fantasy, or not a bit, it's a total fantasy. No one's life is that cool. And when you start making a lot of money and you start getting applause and people love you, and if you do good stuff, that should happen. Mm-hmm. You got to be careful not to take it too seriously and think that you somehow are some messiah and that people should be worshiping you and that you're entitled. And that happens to a lot of people that have not done enough, awareness work and assessment of what they do and who they are. And on the flip side, if you've had terrible things happen to you, that sucks. But you get no power out of being a victim. And so you got to get, we live in a world where, I'll tell you, addiction is a response to trauma. And there's a lot of unhealed trauma. With the 2 years of the shit show called the pandemic and all of the aftershocks and the fear porn that is daily shoved out at people through social media and through every form of media, and the propaganda and all the crap that humans have the ability to be exposed to, is creating generational trauma. We're in the worst addiction crisis and suicides and mental illness and depression in human history, and it's going to go on for decades as a result of even the last 2 years. All that being said, there's a lot of trauma in the world. Yes, it's real, but you don't want to live your life in woundology, because if you're constantly, I'm wounded and I can't do anything about it, that doesn't serve you either. And that also doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself, that you don't step back and say, if I'm really messed up, I need to ask for help. If my life is out of control or I'm really hurting, pain is a messenger. Pain is a way to tell you to pay attention or look at something. And I numbed my pain for a lot of time. I would try to drink the pain away, snort the pain away, fuck the pain away, work the pain away. And if you have a lot of pain internally, you can parlay it into production. Both you and I have spent many years suffering, we have personalities that we will trade peace of mind for productivity, meaning we will make ourselves hurt in order to get something done and to try to accomplish something. And I would like to think most of that has been helpful to a lot of people, because both you and I have transformed thousands of small business owners with just teaching them what we spent a lot of time learning ourselves, which is, how to market and position a company, how to talk about what it is you do. And the caveat to that, though, is at what cost, though? What's the trade-off for how you live your life? So I love achievement. I mean, I love achievers. Lifestyle entrepreneurs, frankly, kind of bore the shit out of me. I mean, and what I mean by that is people that I just want to have a nice house and have a nice boat and have nice material things and take a lot of vacations. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's someone's life. They can do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting other people and they're producing more than they consume. Then I'll still admire that person as living their own life. What I don't like, though, is where there's takers and they exploit, and they literally take money in a form of thievery, and they use marketing in exploitive ways. And I'll tell you, half the marketers out there, looking back and what I've learned, a lot of them I used to think were very clever, good magicians, very capable, but I don't respect their characters. There's a big difference between capability and character. So part of the recovery work and part of the past has taught me, and I've not learned anything more valuable in my life than from the areas of my life where there was massive adversity and there was massive pain. And if I could go back to answer your question and not have it happen, yeah, I probably would. But because it's happened, it's hard for me to even, conceive of how would I do that? Who would I have been? So in 12 steps, there's this term, you will not regret the past or wish to shut a door on it. You will find a new freedom and a new happiness. Mm-hmm. And there's truth to that. If you actually keep going, because there are people that are listening to us right now that have silent battles and pain that I probably couldn't even comprehend. And they're, trying to run a business. They somehow stumbled upon, this, listening to us two goofballs talking about whatever we're talking about. But in their life, they have a lot of shit that they're dealing with. But, they're showing up and they're trying to do stuff. And that's, some days that's the best you can do. You just show up and you have dreams and you have aspirations. But I'll tell you, whenever you think your life is hard or it sucks, and life is hard and does suck a lot of the time. We all have times where we're caring and awesome and excited and successful, and others where we're self-centered and desperate and selfish. And so part of it is like, when my life is working, I'm responding to life. When my life is not working, I'm reacting to life. When I was in active addiction, I would react to things. It was emotional stuff. And I was a very functional addict. I became a millionaire before the age of 30. I quit doing drugs early in my 20s. I was a cocaine addict. In my worst state, I weighed 105 pounds when I was 18 years old, over about a 2-week period. On average, I weighed about 120 pounds, but there was this one week where I literally ate almost nothing, and I got down to 105 pounds, and I freaking looked like a skeleton. I mean, I vaguely, have memories. I mean, so much of it was a blur, but I would look in the mirror and I looked like a freaking skeleton. And it's just like, what is going on in the human psyche that causes the vessel to destroy itself? Like, what is this form of slow suicide? And it was not a conscious decision for me to do that, meaning it was out of my control. And so I have a lot of, when people are like, they're fucking up their life, they're messing up their life, they want to do that or they wouldn't be doing that. And believe me, there's no addict in the world that is deteriorating, or like, if you see the ones where you can physically see it, the crystal meth addicts, the heroin addicts, no one wants to be there. No, they're aware of that they're messed up, but their nervous system is, they can't. Now you take that to a functional addict, and there's a lot of functional addicts. So see, what happens with driven people is they become pleasure deaf, where going for a walk, on the beach or outside, they'll do it if they have families, but inside they're seething. They just can't wait to get back to the business deal. They can't wait to get back to the stimulation or to the gym or wherever their expression is. It is a form of expression. And so what you learn is, you have this energy vessel being a human, and it needs to do things or wants to do things. And so for certain people, sitting still is a nightmare. But for people where sitting still is pleasurable, they look at those people that are like constantly busy. You're like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why don't you just relax? And telling a person like that to just relax doesn't help them. It actually stresses them out even more. And because they have different brain wiring.
Yeah, I know. People say to me, you just need a vacation. I'm like, fuck, the last thing I need is a vacation. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah. So, and I know you talk to me about this a lot, and you're like, you're just, I know you think I'm damaged, and I laugh.
No.
I just laugh because you're like, you're convinced that I'm all screwed up, and I'm not saying I'm, but you're just like, you're like a damaged individual. I'm like, I don't know, but I think the thing is, like, for me, like, I have these conversations with myself a lot, like, am I doing this because I want to do it and I enjoy it and I get pleasure? Am I doing it because, like you said, you're addicted to this adrenaline rush or whatever it is, because there's times when I look at my calendar, I'm like, I hate myself right now. Look at my fucking calendar. It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm like, I fucking hate myself for doing this. And then I'll do it again. Do you see what I mean? That's kind of like what you're saying, like the addict, like, the addicts, like, they hate themselves, but then they keep repeating the behavior, right? So I have these conversations with myself a lot, but then I think, well, like, I really sit down and I say, well, what else would I do if I didn't do this? And I do have other interests. I'm not just working. I mean, I do have other interests. But there's things that, like, when running a business, there's things that I really enjoy. I really enjoy the marketing aspect. I like writing sales letters. I love having conversations with my clients when it's just a Q&A, kind of having a discussion. That's like my favorite thing, just kind of coming up with a new idea or like a strategy meeting or something. Like, I love that. I mean, I'm in my element. It's like flow state. And then there's shit you got to deal with, like, all right, we got employee problems, or we're not hitting numbers, or the profitability numbers. And, you get all this stuff, right, that you got to deal with. And I think this is the challenge for a lot of people, is like, sometimes these things that we like and we hate are kind of intertwined. And can you keep what you like, but get rid of the things, and you do, like, I'm always looking at, like, what do I hate and how do I delegate it, get rid of it, but it's like a junk drawer. It just keeps filling up. Like, then you got to clean out the more junk. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I know there's a lot of alcoholics out there.
Yeah, well, here's my thoughts on it. I mean, like, the treadmill of shit in business, what I have learned, never disappears. It keeps on going. In some cases, the bigger you get, the more you put on your plate, the more treadmill of crap happens. What happens, though, is you improve, you would hope, if you're constantly focusing on literally learning how to do things better, implementing things, getting more skilled, you become more capable,
right.
And so your capabilities increase, your tolerance for bullshit increases, your ability to make decisions gets better. You usually have to get beat up and bloodied quite a bit before you learn to avoid the punch. You have to get run over, metaphorically speaking, by a bus a few times before you realize, just don't step in front of this bus. It's going to go bad. What's that?
Get out of the street. Okay, yeah.
No, exactly. No, exactly. And you also, if you pay attention, you start noticing not just red flags, which are easier to see, you start noticing the yellow flags. You start noticing these warning signs that are presenting themselves, or you start really feeling your gut feeling. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the reasons, like, if I go to events and stuff, I'm not an alcoholic. I was not an alcoholic. So I can drink alcohol and usually not lose my shit, but I rarely ever drink because I don't really want to inebriate myself. I rarely drink caffeine because people that are really wired and driven, the way their body interprets any sort of amphetamine into their system, like caffeine, is drinking stress. So when you add sugar and caffeine to an already hyped up person, you're just literally stressing that person out more. but most of them like that because they like the buzz and in the moment. But so the thing is like I don't want to be inebriated in any way, so I can actually feel, engage the energy of the situation, the environment, and the people, so that I can make better decisions. And I made really poor decisions when I didn't sleep well, when I didn't exercise, when I ate shitty foods, when I put things in there. And then, you can be around a bunch of stimulation, and if you're so consumed by it, you can't tell what's really you want or not. So to go to your point of like, you look at the schedule, at some point your stomach can interpret how much when you've had too much food to eat. But a lot of times time management or priority management, like the only things we could spend, I just wrote a whole book that I spent 2 years on. I mean, it's the most work I've ever put into a single piece of knowledge was this book. And I put so much work into it. And I went through every line of this book, line by line, 5 different times, and even read the whole thing out loud. And it doesn't come out till November, but it's called What's in It for Them. And it's a whole book on how to win the right friends and influence the right people. Because I've always loved Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But I don't just want to win friends and influence people. I want to win the right friends, and I want to influence the right people. Because if you win the wrong friends or you influence the wrong people, you end up with a bunch of obligations and bullshit that you don't like. And if you win fake friends, not only is it a waste of your time, a lot of them will abuse you. That whole Zig Ziglar line of, you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. To a degree, there's truth in that. And there's also a big caveat, which is you can help a lot of people get what they want that not only won't do a damn thing for you, they'll knock you off. They'll steal from you. They'll abuse you, and they'll make your life a living hell if you influence the wrong people and win the wrong friends. And right. So, it became one of these things where I don't say this term in the book, but I write about the 5 things that you can spend. So you can spend, and I call it TAMI. You can spend time, you can spend attention, you can spend money, you can spend effort, and you can spend energy. So if you look at resource allocation, where you're investing your resources and how you want to allocate it, well, you need to do the same thing with your time. And in the beginning, as an entrepreneur, you know what? You're young, you're hungry. You're going to have to get beat up. You're going to have to learn a bunch of shit. I mean, I said once in a talk I was giving that, and Jack Canfield, one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul authors, was in the audience. And he came up to me. He's like, I love that line. I said, I go, if I would have known how much work being successful was going to be, I would have stuck with being a loser. I mean, there's so much shit you don't know that you don't know when you started out. And honestly, if most people knew all of the obstacles that are going to get thrown in their way, all of the crap, I think it would scare most people off. And honestly, Robin,
what is Dan Sullivan's? He has a saying on that. What is it? To start a business takes ignorance and courage, or what?
And courage.
Yeah.
Ignorance and courage.
Right. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
It's true. It's true.
100%.
And he also has he has a great line where it's getting results doesn't take time. It's the not getting results that takes up all your time. Because, and let me say this too. I was trying to say this earlier, but I just didn't. You are one of the most impressive people that I know in terms of drive, determination. I really think if there's any wish that I had for you, and you probably, I know you have some of it. If I had magic powers, I would open up more of the parts in you that would allow you to really take in all of the damn people that you have impacted, and because I know you kind of have an angry optimism. You are rarely satisfied with shit. You're very driven. And because of that, you're able to do more than I think most people could without it. So and none of this is a criticism. It's just simply, it's a compliment actually. And you actually do so much. I mean, you've worked so hard. And I really hope that you are able to take in and appreciate the fact that you have taken so many arrows so that your clients don't have to, and that you have figured shit out, and you don't tolerate bullshit. I mean, you're a tough person. You are, and I imagine when you are angry and disappointed, it probably eats you up inside. And you also have figured out how, I mean, you've had some very difficult shit happen in your life too. I mean, really difficult things. You've had deaths in your family. You've had really awful stuff that you've had to deal with, and you still keep going. I mean, you still, and that doesn't mean you haven't had a lot of pain, and it doesn't mean you haven't had a lot of battles, but you're a warrior, and you work shit out, and you've put in the time. I mean, you've worked your ass off to learn what it is, and so have I. I mean, a lot of time, you've put so much time, attention, money, effort, and energy into learning what it is that you've done, that I think you deserve all of the financial success and all of the relational success and all of the status and all of the admiration that you got. Because I know a lot of marketers that haven't put in a fraction of the time that you've put into it, that make a lot of money, but they're scumbags, and they steal from people, and they have shitty ethics, and they sell crap in a box. And I've never seen you do that.
No,
And yeah, and you care about your, and you have a ton of people, thousands of people whose lives you've made easier, that you've made better. They're able to support their families. They're able to have smiles on their faces. I mean, and that's the most important shit. I mean, when you can take some hardworking person that, they're not going to learn this stuff in school. They don't have people seeking them out, trying to help them. And, and you have to do all kinds of stuff, and do road shows to sell people into joining groups, and run ads, and try to convince skeptical people that you got something that could help them, back it up with a guarantee that if it doesn't work, you give them all your money back. I mean, it's not like, there's a lot of ingenuity and a lot of moving parts. I mean, people have no idea the difficulty of running a business like this. And it's hard, but you also, my hope is that, man, as you go through this journey, you're like, I'm a badass. You've got a boss lady up there, and that's nice for a hashtag and everything, but
yeah, that's my kids.
Yeah, but really, the real thing is like to have that, that joy that comes with it, and being, and so everyone listening, you gotta not only take time to put on the hat and get the work done and make the donuts, like that old Dunkin' Donuts commercial from the 1980s. If you're still too young for that, do a search for Dunkin' Donuts, make the donut commercial. You see this exhausted guy walking around delirious, like, gotta make the donuts. But your whole life can't be that, because then your life sucks. And the way I'll say it is, I always talk about the $1 million racehorse. You've probably heard me talk about this. If you had $1 million racehorse, and this is everyone that's watching us right now, and you owned $1 million racehorse, and every time that horse ran a race, you'd win $1 million. How would you treat that horse so that horse could win $1 million? You'd have the best trainers. You give them the best food, the best nutrition. You would keep that horse away from toxic horses. You would not have that horse up late at night, drinking and smoking at 3 a.m., watching porn, gambling, the money away. That horse would get the best treatment, and you would take care of that horse. And because if you do, that horse wins $1 million races. And if you don't take care of the horse loses. And the punchline here is, you're the $1 million racehorse. We're the $1 million racehorse. When you're running a business, you ain't working for someone. You got to take care of that horse. No one's going to go look out for the horse. And if you happen to be lucky enough to have a good spouse, a good partner, a good friends, and most people don't. Many entrepreneurs are loners, or they're in relationships where no one understands them. And if you can take care of yourself, and you can be more connected with yourself, everything else in your life is going to improve. So, my whole thing is reduce human suffering for driven entrepreneurs, and get people more connected with themselves so they can connect more with other people. Because people are always like, how do you connect with this person? How do you connect? And I have all kinds of strategies for that. And I wrote a whole damn book on doing that. However, it comes when you connect with yourself. Because if you're disconnected, there's 3 ways that we operate with others. We're either communicating to them, we're connecting with them, or we're trying to escape. And so you're either in connection, which comes through communication of alignment, or you're trying to get the hell out of there. And many people live their whole lives trying to escape. So they go to work, they go to drugs, they go to gaming, they go to escapism to escape the pain. And part of it is through the work of where you allocate your time, attention, money, effort, and energy. you do it in a way that actually expands you, doesn't contract you. And every part of you that's like, you know, is much, even if you can only pause for half a second, try to be like, why is that? What am I doing here? How do I course correct? And if you keep looking at it and you keep assessing it, you're going to build a better business. You're going to put up with less bullshit, and you got to set it up. In order to have the conditions you want in your life, you have to set it up in order to get those conditions. And even though I intellectually knew a lot of that stuff, I took a sabbatical because I have this saying that I've had on my wall that I've been saying for years, which is be willing to destroy anything in your life that's not excellent. And after my best friend, Sean Stevenson, died, after a guy that I made wealthy stole a lot of my IP, after several other friends died, after I had a breakup, after the world was going into a pandemic, and I spent half my time with people struggling with addictions, I was like, holy shit. I mean, if I don't step back and really evaluate this, I could be sucked up in this tidal wave. And so that's what I did. And you know what? A lot of people don't have the ability to do that. They don't have the money. They don't have the time. And so, you know, part of it is like, my whole notion is that how can I keep increasing my level of consciousness and capability so I'm not pissing away my time and energy, or worse, using really mad skills that I have that I've spent a lot of time developing, using them in non-productive ways. And what I mean non-productive ways is doesn't mean always working. I mean spending my time on shit that doesn't feed me. You know, it appears to it, but a lot of rich people that we know, they just live in prisons with golden bars. They got all the money, they got nice cars, they got nice houses, and they're in their own prison of their own creation. And that is not a fun way to live.
No, you know, and I want you to talk a little bit about your sabbatical too, because I think that's really interesting. I think it would, you know, when you first told me about it, I was like, man, that's crazy. Like, I don't know that you could do it. Like, and I didn't mean that like in a negative way. It was just kind of like, I think when you tell somebody something, they filter it through themselves. Like they're responding to you, but what they're revealing is their own belief systems, their own mental processing of this idea. And, you know, so when you first told me about sabbatical, you know, I was like, that's crazy. I mean, the thought I would think is like, I would hate to walk away from a business that was as successful as what you had, right? And just trust. And, you know, and I really actually have thought about it a lot, like since you've done it. And, you know, I've probably, like, if I were to do it, what would I do? Because I'd have to do something else. Like, I don't think I could just turn this off. Like, I'd have to direct it in some other way, right? And maybe that's the part of the challenge, right? Maybe that's the personal challenge. Maybe that's the personal growth that comes from that, is how could you, it's no different than like, you know, the Iceman jumping in a bucket of ice, or, you know, and staying there for a hour, or any kind of challenge that you have for yourself. You just go like, how could I possibly do that? But you know, the more I think about it, the more I think, man, that would be a freaking cool thing to do. And you're right. Most people don't have the money. You know, they have family, they have kids. I mean, like, so part of it, like, if I did take a sabbatical, I could spend more time with my kids. My kids are probably annoyed though. You know, I don't know if they wouldn't celebrate.
Well, here's the thing. For one, I hope that even saying that ends up becoming a reality. I hope you do take a sabbatical, and certainly you can. You have, and part of it is I worked 30 years like a crazy person. And even though I had free days, because I learned all that from Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach, I still had the hardest time. And I was a person that for 30 years, you know, I'm 54 years old now. And for 30 years straight, I was on an airplane on average every 2 weeks for 30 years straight. Sometimes I'd fly 2 or 3 times in a week and then, you know, have 3 weeks off or whatever, but I was always traveling everywhere. And a good chunk of that time, I was in a very dark place with moments of excitement and successes, but a lot of angst and a lot of anxiety. And I was always this guy that had a dark cloud following me around, raining on me. And I was always in a hurry to outrun the dark cloud. And as soon as I got somewhere that I was trying to get to, I was in a hurry to be somewhere else. And I could never, like, what the hell is going on? But after tremendous amounts of therapy. And I know I've referenced 12-step groups quite a bit, and there's a lot more that I've done for recovery than 12 steps. 12 steps is only one part of a sound recovery program. There's also biochemical, nutrition, exercise, trauma therapy, the environment, a lot of stuff that goes into it, which is also for people that are not addicts. It works just the same. If you look at community, if you look at your biochemical, your dopamine, your serotonin, your food, if you look at any issues that are really causing you, any silent battles that you have that you're trying to fight, any secrets that are keeping you in shame that you don't address, they're going to haunt you no matter how much money, how much success, how many clients you get, how good your sales letter is. Those are not going to fix core problems. And so you got to find ways the issues are in the tissues. You have to figure out ways to express it in a physical manner or to, heal yourself. And that's where exercise and breathing and meditation and sleep and flow state and, the proper use of plant medicines and all kinds of other stuff come into it. And then the environment, who do you hang out with? So I wanted to take a look at all of that. And because we went into a pandemic, it wasn't like sit on a hammock and relax. I mean, I talk to people with addictions almost daily, and sometimes it'll be several hours, in a day. And for me, it's good for my recovery. Mm-hmm. And so when I took a sabbatical, it was because I had a friend named Mark Schneider who was worth probably about 300 million. And he's the guy that years ago gave me the term elf. We were playing golf, and I rarely play golf. Like George Carlin, a late comedian, would say it's kind of a waste of real estate. But, I know I have a lot of friends that love golf. And we were playing golf, and he said, elf business, easy, lucrative, and fun. And I said, I'm going to turn that into something. So I created elf marketing and developed whole curriculums around what the type of marketing that you and I have taught for years really is elf. It's how to automate. And so, here I was with this life, but there were many things in it that were just stressful. And once the pandemic started, I knew at a gut level, things were going to get really dark. And I just had a sense, and when I say I knew, it's like, did I really know at the time? No, I didn't know what was going to happen, but inside me, I kind of knew. I didn't want to pay attention to it, but it was enough to where I was like, okay, there's something going on here. And Mark, I had recently introduced him in 2020, early 2020, to Paula Abdul, the singer, songwriter. That's a friend of mine I've known for, a few years. And they were putting together a deal with this music project. And I was talking to him every couple times every week and stuff. And his son is a musician, and I ended up getting a message he sent to me on Instagram of all things, saying, "Can I call you on WhatsApp?" And I'm like, "Sure." So he calls me on WhatsApp, and he lets me know that they found his father, my friend Mark, in bed that morning at 59 years old, dead. And here's a very wealthy guy, young guy, and he died. And I had this thought pop into my head: take a sabbatical. I don't know why, but I usually would ignore that and be like, me take a sabbatical? I'm like, the last person that you would think would take a 1-year sabbatical. I have a whole business that's built around me. I run these entrepreneurial meetings. I put out podcasts. I mean, I created a lot of content. I have a lot of people that, for good or bad reasons, listen to me and look to me for, offering advice, suggestions, strategy, whatever. And, but I was like, how the hell do I take a sabbatical? But I was like, I thought about it. And then I did a podcast with Dan Sullivan, and I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical, and here's why. And I, put that out there. So I would have to make a public, I'm not going to let myself out of this one. And I had to set it up, and I had to, really figure out, how do I let go? And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to smoke out all the parts of me to the best of my abilities that required external validation. I had to look at my low self-worth, my low self-esteem, the fact that I build up this identity, which we all have. Because in America, if you ever read the book, The Culture Code, the code for what do you do in America is who you are. When someone says, this is what I do, American culture is, this is who I am. We have so much of our identity wrapped up in our careers. And as entrepreneurs, how else do you describe yourself? I'm a father. Everyone says I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm an artist, I'm a singer. But in a lot of ways, that's kind of like way, way down there compared to here's who I am.
Everybody does that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of a lot of, self bullshit that we do. And so I was like, you know what? I need to find the parts of me that require external validation in order for me to feel okay about myself. And I knew that would be the hardest damn challenge, is to just step away from it all. And it was, but I started the beginning of the year meditating for 7 days, between 4 to 7 hours a day with Joe Dispenza. And I did that for a week. And then I came back, and then I went to Hawaii with my new girlfriend at the time. She's a brilliant doctor. She's actually the top vaginal plastic surgeon in Arizona. And people like, what the hell are you talking about? And it's so funny because I can always insert the word vagina into almost any conversation and make it sound okay. But
no. What's funny is when you first told me about her, I just heard plastic surgeon, and I didn't hear the vaginal part. So I was like saying to you, I'm like, yeah, I probably should talk to her, because like I kind of like don't like this, like, and you must be thinking like, what the hell? I don't want to know this. So anyway.
Yeah. No, I remember making a joke about that too. It's like vaginal plastic, but she's like this brilliant doctor, and unlike many plastic surgeons, she doesn't have an ounce of arrogance. She's so sweet. She's introverted. She's just a really genuine, caring human being, and so calming compared to my craziness. And I also realized there'd be no way in my typical state a person like this would even know how to handle the type of energy. And so I really I really looked at how I just even walk through the world and how I show. So I started doing a lot of meditating, a lot of yoga, a lot of working out, a lot of breathing. Later in the year, I had been doing here and there Wim Hof breathing, 4 years ago when I first heard about Wim Hof, and he's, totally crazy guy. But we actually were, we were in Utah for like 6 days, traveling around and staying in different parts of Park City, Bountiful, Salt Lake. And we listened to his whole audiobook while we were, driving. And I had previously, before I started my pandemic, interviewed James Nestor, who's become a good friend, who wrote the book Breath, brilliant book. Mm-hmm. And, anyone can watch that on YouTube if they want. But I had already been changed. Like, I never learned how to breathe. What was so fascinating is my whole life, even though I've sat in a bazillion yoga classes and all kinds of stuff, most people have no clue how to teach their bodies how to effectively breathe. I mean, there's like 99% of all sleep problems disappear if people learn how to breathe, and especially if they tape their mouth, if they're mouth breathers. It changes everything in so many ways. And I don't want to simplify it, because if you do have certain conditions, not medical advice, read the book Breath, or read, whatever, read Patrick McEwen's books. He's got great books on breathing, and, Wim Hof. But we listened to this whole thing, and it's really about like Wim Hof, his wife committed suicide when he had 5 kids, jumped off of, I believe, an 8-story building, and he didn't have time to process any of the grief. He was broke, and he had these 4 kids to raise. And he healed himself through breathing in through the cold. And it was hearing the way he described it, I was like, this makes sense at a level that it didn't make sense before. And so even though it was snowing out there in Utah, like freezing, we started doing cold plunging that week. And almost daily now, I do saunas, cold plunges, and breathing. And that was one of the most impactful things. And what I found is that people that give the most advice on how to do sabbaticals have never taken one. I made a whole list of lessons. I'm trying to think of the ones off the top of my head that were probably the most useful.
Well, but let me ask you, so what you did this sabbatical, like if you had to narrow it down and say, what was the what surprised you the most? Like, you go into it, you don't really know what surprised you the most, and what do you think was the thing that you got most out of it, if you had to narrow down those 2 things?
What I got the most out of it was the awareness that I don't have to do anything to feel really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to go perform and be the dancing monkey and dancing bear, or whatever analogy someone wants to use. Most of the best things in life are free. Sitting in the middle of a yoga class, really feeling connected and just working the body feels way better than putting together $1 million business deal. So that a thing that was surprising is that there's a lot less givers in the world than I actually thought. There's a lot of people doing a lot of scoundrel things, a lot of propaganda, a lot of abuse, a lot of Darth Vaders right now, and the world needs more Luke Skywalkers. So I found there was a lot less givers, but a lot of true warriors. There are people that stepped up during the pandemic that I never thought, and there were people that I used to have respect for that I just lost that respect. I realized early on that we're in the middle of a war before any of the physical wars started, but it's a different war. It's a psychic war. It's a propaganda war. And what a war is organized murder. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like this cheery, there's a lot of dark shit going on right now. And so that the level of the deception was very surprising to me. But when you're so busy that you don't have time to pay attention to it, often you totally don't see it because it's happening right under your nose, and it's easy to get sucked into it if you don't pay attention. I also stopped all social media, even to this day. Like, here is my regular phone. I don't have Instagram on here. I don't have Facebook. I don't have LinkedIn. I don't have Twitter. I have no social media. I have a second phone. Every once in a while, I'll post something, but I've only posted on Instagram, I think 5 times this entire year. And, and I have a lot of people that follow me, and I don't, and what I learned is that not being on social media feels better for my brain than reading inspirational quotes on social media. So I feel better like just not having to look at it. And that's not to say that it's good or bad. It's just what, because I have no right to tell anyone what is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do within reason. I mean, I think anyone could say you shouldn't hit that person in the face. I mean, you should, there's obvious things, but when it comes to like success, I mean, my definition of success, is, if anything, is only instructional to the degree that if it resonates with someone here and it's like, it sounds like a good idea, maybe I'll try that one on. But everyone can come to their own conclusions of what they like and what they don't like. And so for me, I really wanted to develop my spidey senses to better boundary myself around obligations that I should not take, because entrepreneurs that are too tightly scheduled cannot transform themselves. And I wanted to transform myself, and I needed to free up my schedule because I could not, and I don't think most people can do it when they're tightly scheduled. And
right.
Yeah.
I sacrifice a lot of stuff because I'm so on, constantly. So no, 100%. Like I said, you doing the sabbatical, I think, at first it was like, that's a crazy idea. I mean, like when you first said it, I was like, oh, was it crazy? And that's an initial response. Sometimes you hear something but then you process it a little bit and you think about it and you go, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, the more, I should think about to doing something like this. So, and I definitely think about it on the tough days, so I take that sabbatical, but no, I think you're right. It's always that balance between, because the work I do is fulfilling. I do enjoy what I do. I really do, and, I talked about this like last year, I talked about, there's a concept, I know, it's like, you have to set a goal of enough is enough number, right? You get this amount of money. It comes from Napoleon Hill, right? You have to set your mind upon a certain amount of money, and it has to be definitive. And when you get that amount of money, that's the amount of money where you never have to work again. Like, whatever that is for you, because obviously some people, if their lifestyle is, I have to have a private jet and I have to have 5 houses, their enough is enough number is going to be different than somebody who can say, well, I'm just happy living in my house with whatever, some like a good car and whatever. Right. So, because like for years I told myself, once I hit that number, and I used to joke about on stage, I said, man, if I'm in the middle of a seminar and my And my financial advisor texts me and says, hey, you hit your number. I'm like dropping the mic. I'm walking off the stage, right? And it was just like this joke I made, but I think it was just more of a psychological coping mechanism to say, okay, once I get there, you know, it was enough to keep me going. But then like, once I hit the number, I mean, I remember the day I looked at my investments and I was like, wow, okay. You know, I'm there. And you know, that day I just worked out and, you know, I had chicken salad for lunch. Like I didn't sell it. You know what I mean? Like it was just like,
Right.
and I went right back to work. You know, I mean, it was like this kind of, it was kind of funny to me because I remember the day being just such an ordinary, everyday kind of thing, you know, and, you know, so it just to me, you know, the other thing I have to think I'd be aware of is like, it's the Dan Sullivan, it's moving, it's the gap, right? You know, you see the horizon, right. you run to that horizon and you're at that point and all you see is the next horizon. So, you know, and I don't know if that's a good thing. I think it's good in some ways. I think it's bad in some ways. And I think, like you said, we're all just trying to figure it out. Like we're always dealing with figuring out ourselves. I mean, because to me, I always say being an entrepreneur is the best personal development seminar you'll ever put yourself in, because it forces you to figure out so many things. And the number one thing it really forces you to figure out is who you are, where your strengths and weaknesses are, because you got to start with honesty. You can't lie. I mean, if you get like a Jordan Peterson, his rule 8, you know, his rules for life, you know, rule number 8, you know, tell the truth or at least don't lie. You know, that is like, that's my favorite rule, because, you know, you sit there and you're constantly, it's not the lies other people tell you, it's the lies you tell yourself and the things you cover up and the things you try to, you know, your coping mechanisms, like, you know, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or it's work, or it's just not having the conversation or just avoiding something. And that's a way of coping with it. And, you know, I think your life is that's the meaning of life, is you're constantly evolving yourself, like to a higher level, to a higher level, to a higher level. And to me, running a business, being an entrepreneur is part of that journey of discovery for me, you know, I mean, now it's different for everybody, but that's the lens I look at it is, you know, all the shit that I deal with growing my business from nothing. I didn't even have a bag of pennies, you know, like I had nothing, started my business. I did credit card debt. You know, I bartered my services to get a website set up. Like I just had a phone. I mean, like that was it. I did marketing, you know, I knew how to sell. That was my one saving grace, right? And and that journey you go on to go from absolutely nothing to where, you know, I've got a multi-million-dollar business. We're the largest peer group in our industry. I've got a magazine, a media company. We've got a virtual event platform. I can't even tell you this, the stuff that we've got at opportunities in front of me are just like things I would never in a million years have thought I would have been capable of, you know, and it's like, you know, and that's the part of you where it's like, do I keep going? Do I pull back? Do I, you know, it's all that, you know, it's really hard to work for me personally. I think it's really hard for me to walk away when all I see is blue ocean and opportunity. Mm-hmm. And to walk away, you know what I mean? And to say, well, I'm going to go on so hard. And I'm sure it was for you. I don't know. It maybe.
No, totally was. And so one of the things too is unlearning is harder to do than learning, because unlearning happens on a unconscious level. Yeah. We always think we just need to learn what to do. But in many cases, like I never would have gotten through recovery if I would have kept learning. I needed to unlearn that doing these things or operating this way or having this belief that I thought was true, but it really wasn't. Because what is a belief? A belief means you're just not sure. So let's just take the statement of, I don't know if I could do a sabbatical. Well, I didn't know if I could either. I needed to unlearn that. I needed to create a possibility that, well, if I got hit by a truck and I was dead, guess what? I'd be taking a sabbatical, but it wouldn't have been by choice.
Not on your terms, though.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, but the thing is, you play tricks on yourself sometimes in order to come up with it. But like anyone that's your true friend, and if you really want to take time off and you really, for whatever reason, you don't need a rationalization, you just want to do it because you want to do it. If any true friends, real clients, they will respect that. And the ones that get shitty about it, or the ones that like, no, Robin, you must exist for our, you know, entertainment or whatever. I mean, they don't have a real, you know, responsible relationship. They have a codependent sort of victim, relationship with
Or
someone.
they just can't stand the thought of you taking time off when they can't. They feel trapped.
No.
You know?
Of course, yeah. There's envy too. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people that they don't want to see someone succeed because for whatever reason, where they're, I have a Genius Network member named Don Wood, Dr. Don Wood, who does this trauma decoding thing. He used to be a former, hockey player, and he basically says if you understood the atmospheric conditions of somebody's life, it makes sense why they do the things that they do, why they're an addict, why they're whatever. If someone understood the atmospheric conditions of my life, your life, it would make sense how we ended up the way that we are. And what I learned is that you can actually change the atmospheric conditions of your life, and you can change the atmospheric conditions of other people's lives if they're open to having those atmospheric conditions change. And so by taking a sabbatical, I wanted to change the weather conditions. I like, my life, but there were some days I didn't like the weather, and I wanted to change it. So I'm just using this as a metaphor, of course, but
Right.
it's like, unlearning. And if you're like, what if I did take a sabbatical? What would I have to set up? What would that look like? And I'll tell you now, I could do in 6 weeks now what took me a year to do last year, because I had to go through just different things of kind of seeing unraveling it all. And it's way different. And because of that, but I would actually really encourage you to take a very long, as much as you could stomach. And you don't have to sit around doing nothing. I stayed busy. I just didn't do any work. My Genius Network members ran my group, my team members. And here's the fascinating thing. I had team members that I thought were amazing. And when I announced I was taking a sabbatical, as we got closer to it, they left because they knew deep down inside, they were not responsible and accountable enough, and they didn't want to be accountable. And then my assistant Eunice, who she's been my assistant for 27 years. She's amazing. Mm-hmm. She's the nicest, sweetest person, not assertive, doesn't ever want to give people shit. I saw things come alive in her that I didn't think were even possible. And the resourcefulness that I saw in some of my team members, they handled it. And the ones that couldn't, they left. And you have really no idea how good your team is and how much they care about stepping up until you take a sabbatical or until you take off free days, and it doesn't have to be a year. It could be like a week, but it's like, if you're always there to save the day, then they don't tap into a level of resourcefulness that all humans do. So in a lot of ways, it wasn't just for me, it was for my members, it was for my team. And every meeting that we had, the only thing that I heard in terms of reports that I would do with Eunice every few weeks, she would give me an update on how are things going. She would tell, I never watched a single meeting. I didn't look at anything. I didn't check in on it. All I would hear is, what were the feed for? We call them feed forward. We don't call them feedback forms. 8, 9s, or 10s, mostly, with 80% of the things being 9s and 10s. And it's the meetings worked, and I was like, it worked out better than I thought it would. I actually, and I went in expecting, I expected shit to fall apart, and some did. And there was one thing where I did have to step in because believe it or not, we had an IT guy go rogue.
I know. I was going to ask you if we could talk about that, because my audience would love to hear about this story,
Oh, we had an IT guy that I had for years that just disappeared. He just literally, we thought he died. We didn't know. And then he finally resurfaced after I had already had to hire. And that was the only thing that I had to be called on, because I couldn't have paid someone $10 million to be able to answer the questions that only I knew. And that was the weird thing where I realized no matter how much you step away, there's certain things in your business. And I would have been okay with just ignoring it completely. But what I was concerned about is any of our clients' personal data compromised. And so I literally hired a forensic IT company to go in there, that was a recommendation from, very smart, guy who specializes, who he is. I'm just not going to mention the name. Very well-known person and who's a consultant for high-level agencies. And he made a referral to me, and we hired this company, and we just made sure that all of our clients' information was not compromised, which it wasn't. And that was the only thing. But I also,
you called me, and I was like, I gave you the name of a couple people. So
yeah, and we did talk to that person that you recommended, which was super helpful and super awesome. And yeah, you're one of the first people that I reached out to, because this is your world, right? And that was probably the only thing that really I got sucked in for a period of time just so I could handle that. But I had someone offer me $200,000 to do a 1 hour, a 60-minute podcast that I turned down. And if they would offer me 10 million, I would have turned it down. And it's not because I didn't want the money. What I made a commitment to is I cannot literally violate because the moment I take something and violate my own rules that I made from not the rules of a sabbatical, my rules. There are no rules of sabbaticals as far as I'm concerned, meaning you do what you want. It's your life. I mean, the one rule would go back to the Jordan Peterson thing. Don't tell people you're don't lie, because all that does is hurt you internally. Even if no one finds out, karmically, you just kind of fuck yourself every time you do that. So, and so, so it was, it was awesome. So I don't know, how much time do we have here? Because I want to make sure if there's any particular thing we need to.
No, I mean, like this kind of, when I talk to people, it's kind of this organic conversation. There might be some things to talk about, but I mean, I think we covered the things that I wanted. I just wanted to introduce you to a lot of my clients. You spoke at an event of mine. God, it had to have been like 8-10 years ago, right?
Yeah, at least.
And people loved you, but I mean, it's just been a while, and it's just, and so people don't know you. So I just wanted to bring you back and I definitely wanted to talk about your sabbatical, just your background, your history, and everything else. Because Joe, like I have said to you, and this, I think it was Nick had me do. I don't know if it made the documentary. Candidly, I haven't watched it. I don't watch it.
You are in my movie, and we are getting ready to release the movie in conjunction finally with my new book.
Okay.
When that comes out in November 1st.
All right. So I got to watch it, right? So I'll watch. Are you doing like a movie release, or like, are you doing a whole thing, or are you just?
Here's what's really funny, Robin. Like, I have a couple of people on my team that are really bright, and I'm letting them decide if we're going to. And here's the funny thing. I'm still contemplating the pre-launch stuff. I don't even know if I'm going to do any social media. And there are people like, you have to get on all these podcasts. You have to do this, you have to do that. And I'll certainly be on some, because I run a pretty high level group with a lot of people that do podcasts and stuff. And I can get on most podcasts if I wanted to. But I've been sitting there thinking, what if I don't do any of that stuff? What if I just put my book out? I don't give a shit about the New York Times. I mean, I don't care if I hit the New York Times. Will I hit the New York Times? Probably. I think there's enough momentum. I mean, I got glowing testimonials from, and here's the funny thing, like the blurbs and the praise for my book, I put it out to my list, my Genius Network members and a few friends and a few famous people, because the book's being published by Hay House. So it's going to be, I'm recording the audiobook for it in a couple of weeks. And I said to everyone in a video, don't give me a book blurb for this unless you read the entire book and you like it. I don't want any testimonials from anyone that has not read the entire book. And so there's not a single testimonial on the book from anyone that they've all told me they've read the entire book. And if they haven't, I didn't use their testimonial. And even Tony Robbins, he's, sent an email saying, just write up 3 testimonials or blurbs, the one you like, because I know Tony personally. And I'm like, send back a message, no, I can't do that. Only if you read the whole book and you like it. There's because almost everyone that publishes a book that has famous people on it, those people haven't read their damn book. And it goes against everything I teach in the book, which is like, don't lie. Like, don't bullshit people. There's a big difference between pursuing opportunities versus being an opportunist. There's a difference between connecting with people versus connecting, where you connect with them by conning them. And there's a lot of connectors that are out there. Vern Harnish read my book, and he's like, this is one of the best books of the century. He wants me to do a course on it. As a result, with him, he asked me to speak at his big event he's got coming up in a few months in Denver. I just love the book. He's like, this is the best business book I've read all year, and one of the best books I've ever. And I just want this book to exist for decades. I hope it does. I mean, and I'm not saying that, I hope it does. I hope it resonates with people. But the bigger thing is, if it doesn't, that's okay. And if it does, I'll be totally stoked. And I'm not going to just, I know enough about marketing where I can do all the PR and I can do all the marketing and I can do all that bullshit. But I'm really thinking, what if I don't? What if I just put it out there and see if people really like it? And as
Yeah.
far as, and as far as if it hits the New York Times, I don't even know. I won't even put New York Times bestseller on the book unless New York Times is willing to actually be authentic and put books that have hit the Times, but they don't like the topic matter, because right now the New York Times is not real. It's all, they pick and choose who they want. And that's not how life should work if you're trying to hold yourself out as a authentic organization. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling on that, but yeah, I mean.
No, but go back, like in your documentary, like I know Nick had asked me, and I just remember it, like, you know, you look at through your life, there's the Dr. Phil exercise. I'm going to screw this up. It's like, there's defining moments, there's influential people, and there's pivotal people, defining moments, and decisions. I forget, like Dr. Phil has this exercise, you look it up, and I actually think it's a good exercise to go through, like where you make critical decisions. There's like, and he has like numbers, there's like 11, you know, defining moments, and 8 critical people and 3 critical decisions, something like that, right? And, you know, when I think about people who've really been influential in my life, like I have said to you before, I think one of the things that you showed me early on, because I started learning this world of direct response marketing, and you're right, there's a lot of con artists, there's a lot of scumbags out there, people I won't name. When I finally you look under the hood, like, you know, you've said it even yourself, that the best thing they have is the sales letter. Like the sales pitch is really good, but then when you look at what's really going on, they're conning people, they're ripping them off. And you had like the first direct response marketer I met where I felt like you really were genuine, authentic, and you kind of showed me that you don't have to be a scumbag. You can be genuine and authentic and real, and not con people, like deliver real value, extreme value for money, which is like one of my core values, always deliver extreme value for money, you know, that sort of thing. And so I think, you know, you are one of those people that has, you know, definitely impacted my life in a positive way. So I just want to, you know, publicly say thank you for everything that you do. And yeah, I know you said that about me, but it's the same thing for you. I mean, you have probably impacted way more. I mean, I'm playing in this little sandbox, you know, called, you know, MSPs, and that's in IT. It's this, you know, it's this little thing, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm you know, I'm glad I can impact people. I mean, that is a lot of what keeps me going. But I do think that you also are one of those genuine, honest, real, just smart people that, you know, I'm just honored that, you know, you would even take time with me today. I know you get paid to do this, and I just kind of asked you if you do it, and you did it out of the generosity of your heart. See, I'm drinking a little bit. So, you know, I just want to say thank you for that, because it's very,
no, absolutely. Thank you. And like, look, I mean, like Vern says, there's real friends and there's deal friends, and you're a real friend, you know, you are a real friend. And so it's like, and I like doing things with people that I like, you know, what Gary Halbert, who was fucking crazy, you know, crazy, wacky copywriter, he had brilliant skills at copywriting, but the poor guy was manic depressive. We talked about addiction quite a bit. I didn't understand enough about it back then, but looking back, I realized so many of our conversations about that was Gary trying to deal with his own, you know, out of control compulsions. And he said this thing to me where he's like, what a lot of people think of as wisdom, as people get older, what a lot of people think of as wisdom is simply fatigue. And so, you know, life will beat the shit out of you, and pay attention to it, so you don't just, the time you take time off is not after you've got, let it be your own choice, not life doing it, because life's going to do that to you anyway. But what I would say to people, and believe me, I greatly appreciate the compliments and the kind words and stuff, and I want people that are listening to this also realize that there are parts of you that are way more valuable in terms of skills, in terms of capability, in terms of attention, in terms of solution orientation. And if you resource yourself, you can tap into those things. There are so many, you know, like you talk about, what is your main website? The tool,
well, we moved it over now to the marketingteam.com.
Okay,
but technologymarketingtoolkit.com. Yeah.
Okay, so think about, technology marketing toolkit, right? So what is a toolkit? You know, what is a tool? A tool is designed to do something, right? And usually it's to solve a problem. And people, what you actually, the main reason people don't do as good as they could with marketing is not because they don't have the right strategies, even though some that they have to, if they have the wrong strategies, right? It's they undervalue the importance of it. They undervalue how damn important it is. And if you can give people tools and you can then get them to understand and see that if you utilize these tools, all of the shit that you're not figuring out in your life can be solved with the right tool. You know, imagine like trying to drink soup without a bowl or without a spoon, you know, or a fork. It's a wrong tool.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff is there. Everyone that's listening to us, the gold is there. You just need to learn how to mine it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you need to quit hanging around with losers that don't know how to mine, trying to give you advice. You need to go to people that have done it, and you need to go to people that will have been there and done that. And you know, one of the things is taking advice from that. And everybody that's listening to this right now, watching, they have tools that are in their toolbox, or that they have access to tools if they seek out actively the right who's, and you're a who for anyone that listens to you, right? And use them. And so I just hope that what we've talked about today will encourage and inspire you to be like, you got so much going for it. I'll just say this. I was speaking to a group of about 800, mostly young entrepreneurs, probably 6-7 years ago. And I just had this thought that came into my head. It just came into my head live while I was doing the talk, because I never can give the same talk. I talk about some of the same things, but I've never had a signature talk. And I said to I'm like, how many of you are worth $1 million or more? So like one guy in the back raises his hand. I'm like, okay, anyone worth 5 million or more? Same guy raises his hand. I go, how many of you would like me to give you $1 million? Whole bunch of hands go up. I'm like, okay, how many of you will pluck out an eyeball if I give you $1 million? No one raises their hand. I'm like, how many of you would lop off one of your feet or one of your legs for 5 million, 10 million? No one. 50 million? No one. I go, huh, interesting. So none of you are worth $1 million, but you wouldn't take $1 million for an eyeball or for a leg. So you all have this thing called vision, and the ability to talk and the ability to hear. And there are people on the planet that their dreams would come true if they could be in your life for just even a day. And you're sitting here depressed and bummed out, or thinking you can't make it. You got vision, you got sight, be grateful for it and utilize it. Realize that you have tools that are factory equipped right now. Take care of yourself. And then I went into a talk about, he or she who has their health has 1,000 dreams. He or she who does not have their health has only one. I'm like, you're not laid up in a hospital bed. You can see. So for one, if you just realize how amazing that is. And I say, like, I spent a good chunk of my life not having any gratitude for and bitching about, like, I can fucking walk. I'm not laid up in a wheelchair. My buddy, Sean Stevenson, my buddy, Dave Kekich, when I'm sitting there bitching about my life, I was like, these guys had to deal with stuff I can't even fathom. And they still built a great life for themselves. So everyone that's listening or watching us today, yeah, go look, have fun, go party, do whatever the hell it is that makes you feel good. And at the same time, you're the $1 million racehorse. You have a mad tools, and utilize. Like I always like to say, you'll do better mastering one book than reading 50 books. You're better off taking one. Not trying to listen to every podcast you can at double speed so you can stuff more content into your head. When you find someone that has solutions to what it is you're trying to solve, and I know you do, Robin, for your clientele, go deep with it, because the people that make the most with what you do, that have that go the farthest. Not when I say make the most, I don't just mean money. I mean make the most of their business, their enterprise, are the ones that go deep with what it is that they learn. And so, my whole thing is just to encourage people. You're already here. It's a lot easier to maintain momentum than it is to create it. And don't go trying to, don't run around looking for the magic guru. Just find shit that works and get good at it. And if you do, your life is going to get better. And share it with other people, because that's the meaning. Don't steal it. Don't plagiarize it. But if you learn something, go tell someone, oh, I listened to Robin today and here she said something and here's what it meant. And it'll integrate it. It'll deepen it into your mind, into your psyche, and into your behavior. Because ultimately, this whole like thought leader, like you're thought leader. People will call me, and I'm like, any idiot can come up with a thought. They can steal other people's thoughts. Result leaders are what matter. And you're a result leader. You can produce a result. You have a track record. So seek out result leaders. Be a result leader yourself, and don't bitch and complain about how the life is not giving you something if you're not out there producing results. And if you are producing results in the world, then appreciate what's going to come back to you as a result of it, because life rewards the people that produce more than the people that consume. Be a giver, not a taker. Life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And if you operate that way, you have a fucking awesome life.
Yeah. Cheers, Joe. That brilliant. Cheers, everybody's out there. I'm looking at, we didn't ask for a lot of feedback. So we don't, so Brian's saying we're a big sandbox. We're a very cool sandbox. I mean, like, if someone pisses me off, I know people who can like erase their digital lives or,
That is true. Well, I have Andre Norman, who
yes.
I've been working with for over 3 years. He spent 14 years in maximum security prison. So like I've got all these ex-convicts that are now doing good stuff in the world, helping people in schools and doing interventions and helping people with suicides. And it's like, it's pretty crazy, but that's its all part of the mix. And plus I have a ghost town. I bought a 40-acre ghost town. So we're going to build whole communities in Clear, Arizona. Which
hey, do you know Ray Villafane? Have I introduced you to Ray Villafane?
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, he's an artist. He's a pumpkin carver. So he's been like, I found him on Food Network, and he does all those, around Halloween they do those crazy contests and the guy's amazing art. I mean, just an amazing artist. And
I don't know if it's the same guy. I've seen pumpkins that were carved by an artist that blew my mind. I don't know if it's the same dude.
Probably Ray. But he's like the world's literally, he's like the world's leading pumpkin carver, but he just started a ghost town of some kind where he's creating all these characters, and he's super creative, just a very cool guy. I should connect you with him.
Yeah, connect me with that dude. We'll bring him out to Clear because Arizona's hot in the middle of summer, but I've been doing crazy stuff. We bought and when I say I have a couple of partners in this. We bought a 400-acre ranch that we're turning into a private resort. We bought 260 acres of silver and gold mine claims. We bought a 40-acre ghost town called Clear. We're going to use it for addiction recovery, healing for artists. We're going to literally, we're putting it in VR. We've already filmed the VR program. So we're going to be the first ghost town in virtual reality through GeniusX, and cool shit. So yeah.
Exciting. All right. Well, cool. Well, again, cheers, Joe. Cheers, everybody. Appreciate you guys. And there you have it. Another great minds drinking alike. All right.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Robin.
Peace out.